Welcome to another episode of The Dissection. There are calls for the Minister of Higher Bubblegum and Education to resign. Sorry. I meant to say there are calls for the Minister of Ask Encyclopedia and Ask Google to resign. Sorry, what am I doing? There are calls for the Minister of Higher Education and Training, Dr. Nobuhle Nkabane, to resign or for her to be removed by the president after the whole fiasco that's been playing out, left, right, and center. And that's how we end. Remember that song, Fiasco? There's a whole fiasco happening in the Department of Higher Education and Training. So all of this comes from the minister's dismal performance in the parliamentary committee. Of course, the decision to make the appointments, because she made a variety of appointments which were dubious and questionable, was the first mistake. But the committee meeting and the sequence of events after the committee meeting is what has got the minister right now into a world of political smackdown. Chewing gum, being dismissive, being evasive, being more otherwise than a streetwise too. It was a lot. And watch this clip and everything will make sense. You begin to understand why there's been this continuing rise of calls for her to either step down or to be removed by the president. A lot happened. A lot of hours of content happened in the Committee for Higher Education, but this is just a slice. And you'll see in this one slice everything you need to know.
The entire exercise was done by the independent panel that was appointed by the minister. The independent panel does the selection, the sifting, and then they also select those that meet the criteria. So I'm confident that the people that I appoint, be it looking or presiding over NSF or NSFAS, as well as the councils and this one, they are credible and reputable in the society. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So that panel, who were the panel that the minister appointed to do that shortlisting?
Thank you so much for the question again. I believe all of us, we understand Section 11 of the Skills Development Act that says the minister must appoint the chairpersons of the accounting authority. So there is no need for me to come and declare my volunteers, people assisting me voluntarily to execute my responsibilities. I am not in a position. It is the minister. If there is something wrong that you believe it happened with the entire process, better you should, the person who is empowered by the legislation to execute that responsibility. That's the unfortunate part of it.
What makes in your own view, Minister, what makes a person credible? When you say this one, Tebogo Chair, is credible or is not credible, what makes him credible in your own view? Minister?
What makes a person credible, Chair, is exactly how it is defined when you Google. By encyclopedia, you'll see what it means. It's exactly that.
You are not going to answer us. You are not going to answer us, Minister.
I've responded, Chairperson.
Okay, so I'll take it, the Minister, you are not going to answer us on the credibility.
You know, there are certain days that happen in your life which you keep dreaming about and having nightmares over, some of the worst days. I think this day here is going to continue to be something that will come back to the minister over and over again in her nightmares, because this day is going to be so momentous in her career. The answers she gave in the committee that day are coming back to haunt her. In politics, they say sometimes the cover-up is worse than the original sin. There are now calls coming from senior academics who've worked with various ministers of higher education for her to step down. Specifically, Professor Makgoba, the former University of KwaZulu-Natal Vice-Chancellor, he has written in Sunday Times that the minister needs to step down. And he's somebody who's very senior in the education space, somebody who's respected. And the fact that his opinion has been published in the Sunday Times in and of itself is something that should be worrying the minister. Professor Makgoba says the Minister of Higher Education has become a disgrace and an embarrassment to the higher education sector, to the president, the public, and to the noble values and ethics cherished in higher education. Those are serious words. The Minister of Higher Education has become a disgrace and an embarrassment to the higher education sector, to the president, to the public, and to the noble values and ethics cherished in higher education. He says that Nkabane has brought the higher education sector itself into disrepute, and her presence in the position of minister damages the sector. Those are harsh words. Not only are these types of calls being made by senior academics, the chairperson of her independent panel, remember she was saying, I've got an independent panel, it's above board, the process was perfect, everything is perfect. Now the chairperson of her independent panel has distanced himself from everything. He said, Andiz gulento yakho le. I will read some of his letter to the minister later in the video. But you have to know the temperature of the bubble gum in her mouth is rising. And I don't know if she'll be able to Google and encyclopedia her way out of this. As we speak right now, there are also calls for criminal consequences for the minister. The chairperson of the committee has said that Minister Nkabane appeared to be in breach of Section 17 of the Powers, Privileges and Immunities of Parliament and Provincial Legislatures Act. This act makes it a criminal offence to deliberately provide false and misleading information to Parliament. The consequences of a breach are very serious and they can actually amount to a prison term of up to 12 months. So already your committee chairperson is saying, I think you broke the law. The chairperson of your independent panel is saying, I don't know anything about what you're talking about. And at the same time, the minister may also be found to be in violation of the Executive Members Ethics Act. This is the legislation that deals with ethics for members of the cabinet, deputy ministers, and provincial executive councils in South Africa. Ministers are required to meet various standards in the Code of Ethics. Section 2 deals with the general standards. It says the following at 2.1. Members of the executive must A. perform their duties and exercise their powers diligently and honestly. Honestly, remember that. They must fulfill all of the obligations imposed upon them by the Constitution and the law, and they must act in good faith and in the best interest of good governance, and act in all respects in a manner that is consistent with the integrity of their office or the government. So honesty, integrity, good faith. These are all things that can be questioned. 2.3, members of the executive may not, A, willfully mislead the legislature to which they are accountable. They may not willfully mislead the legislature to which they are accountable. B, willfully mislead the president. And C, act in a way that is inconsistent with their position. So you can see that there may be grounds for members of the committee to say she's violated the Ethics Act. In addition to this, the Act allows the Office of the Public Protector to investigate. In Section 3, it says, the Public Protector must investigate any alleged breach of the Code of Ethics on receipt of a complaint. The Public Protector must submit a report on the alleged breach of the Code of Ethics within 30 days of the receipt of the complaint to the President, if the complaint is against a cabinet member, premier, or deputy minister. Then it says, when conducting an investigation in terms of this section, the Public Protector has all the powers vested in the Public Protector in terms of the Public Protector Act. We already know that the Democratic Alliance has lodged a complaint about the minister and her conduct and her responses in the committee with the Office of the Public Protector. The only challenge with the office under President Ramaphosa is that it has often taken long periods of time to investigate these issues way beyond the 30 days that the Act requires. If you look at the Phala matter, that was a slow walk. The issue of the Enoch Mgijima Stadium in the Eastern Cape was a slow walk as well. I think the issue was brought up in 2021. The report was only published this week in 2025. The other issue is that the office itself has been seen recently not so much to be an office of the public protector, but so much as the office of the president's protector, right? So there are some concerns that when the issues are at odds with the president, that the public protector may end up explaining that, no, the president doesn't sell. He doesn't sell. He invests and then, he transacts and the transactions are not perfected and the imperfections are such that if you squint your eyes, you'll see that he's not selling, he's reselling. I'm just playing. I'm just playing. But obviously, there are concerns about the integrity of the office in this particular dispensation because the legal reasoning of the public protector when it came to the Phala report was at such odds to the legal reasoning of the independent panel, the Section 89 independent panel, which was chaired by a former Chief Justice. So that's not a trivial panel. Very serious legal weight was in that panel, and the legal reasoning was not in conjunction, or it was not aligned, and people were then concerned, okay, the public protector's office looks as if it's not necessarily always going to be in line with other schools of thought as it pertains to conflicts of interest in the president's office. So let me just go over the timeline for those who haven't been following and who want to understand how we got to this particular point. And we can actually call this timeline How to Lose Your Job in 30 Days. And the story starts in the middle of May. On the 13th of May, the Democratic Alliance called for the Minister of Higher Education to come to the parliamentary committee to explain the list of appointments to the Sector Education and Training Authority boards, SETAs. On that list were various names which they pointed out raised legal and ethical concerns. For instance, several names were linked by blood and political proximity to the ANC chairperson Gwede Mantashe. Gwede Mantashe also happens to be the Minister of Minerals and Petroleum Resources. One of those names even included his own son, the son of Gwede. Not ubaba kaTutuzane or ingane kaGwede. Ingane kaGwede was in there. Buyambo, Mantashe. So it was ubaba kaBuyambo, basically. So let me get serious. He came here for serious stuff. So one of the names was the son of Gwede. Son of Gwede, SOG. So the SOG was on that list. The SOG was on the list. The other questions that were raised was that the current Minister of Higher Education herself served under the Minister of Minerals from 2021 to 2024 as the Deputy Minister. So questions were being asked, is this a quid pro quo? What's happening here? Why are you appointing so many people who are linked to your former boss? The other question that were raised was that it seems that many people actually who were also on the list were from the Ramaphosa camp, the KZN side of the Ramaphosa camp. From a legal perspective, when an executive or minister takes an administrative action, that action must be done lawfully, it must be done rationally, and it must be done reasonably. Otherwise, that action is actually open to review and can be set aside. There are various grounds of review that exist under administrative action and under administrative law. And all of this is covered by the Promotion of Administrative Justice Act, PAJA. You need to appreciate that in a democracy, ministers and presidents don't just do as they please when they please. They exercise power on behalf of the public, in the interest of the public, not in their own name. Those who govern do so with the consent of the governed. Therefore, that exercise of power must at all times be above reproach. And you can tell from the way the minister was answering questions that she didn't view herself as necessarily having to account to Parliament and explain who had to be on the committee, etc., etc. And you can see how she ended up in problems, right? So after the DA makes this call, on the 14th of May, there was a parliamentary meeting and questions were raised about the appointments. The temperature actually got hot. And what added temperature to the issue was that Sihle Lonzi, the cater undertaker, was kicked out of Parliament for asking about the appointments. And that footage went viral. On the next day, 15th of May, due to the public outcry and the media concern that was being raised, the minister then backtracked and, perhaps more accurately, she panicked. There was an announcement then of the withdrawal of the appointments which had been made by the minister. On the 22nd of May, there was an announcement of the reopening of the nomination process. In fact, starting the process over was, in my opinion, a tacit concession that there was something wrong with the initial process and the appointments. On the 30th of May, the minister appeared before Parliament in the video that I showed you earlier, in the now disastrous day of bubblegum and encyclopedia. The disastrous day of you are. Oh, that was so unprofessional from the minister, to be quite honest. And she made a crucial error, right? Outside of the issue of bubblegum, outside of the issue of arrogance, she made a crucial error in attempting to explain how the process was perfect beyond reproach, because she then claimed that the appointments had been made by an independent panel. And as you saw, there were questions about who was on that independent panel. She refused to disclose the names on the basis that these people were volunteers, that there were privacy concerns, and that's where I think the check started. The checkmate comes a bit later. But she was in check as soon as she said, this is an independent panel of volunteers that chose these things. Because once you say there's an independent panel, people are going to check who those people are. On the 5th of June, we heard that the president was demanding answers from the Minister of Higher Education. She issued a statement indicating that she would be providing the president with an explanation and that she actually may not have acted appropriately in the parliamentary committee. And then Parliament had demanded those names. She had to provide the names. On the 17th of June, the minister made an announcement of the names of the panel. And this is where checkmate happened. The names of the nomination panel for the SETA boards, as submitted by the minister, are as follows. Advocate Terry Mutau as the chairperson. They said he didn't attend any of the meetings. Mr. Asisipo Solani, Miss Nelisiwe Semane, Mr. Mabuza Ngubane, Miss Rulani Ngwenya. So this list created new challenges for the minister. She said the names of people who were volunteering, people who were independent. But now that the list is out, people are looking at the numbers and the numbers are not numbering. The sense is not making what it's supposed to make. Ki nonsense, fella, that they are seeing. And I'll tell you why. So Mr. Mabuza Ngubane, for instance, she put his name at the bottom of the list, but he should have been at the first top of the list. He's not an independent panel member. He's the deputy director in the Department of Higher Education and Training and is the chief director for SETA coordination. In fact, he was actually in the committee meeting on the 30th of May with the minister. So at that point, she should have said, this guy is on the panel. There's no secret there. He's not a volunteer. He's not independent. Miss Nelisiwe Semame is the chief of staff for the Minister of Higher Education. She cannot be reasonably construed to be an independent member of the panel as she directly reports to the minister. And she also was in the committee meeting on the 30th of May. Asisipo Solani is an appointed advisor to the minister. He's not an independent person. And then critically, Advocate Terry Mutau says the following. He says, I was not part of the panel. He wrote a letter to the minister saying basically that he takes a dim view of his name being mentioned in the whole process. Do you remember Advocate Terry Mutau, one of the cases there where he was representing MK, I think last year? He comes there with shades because he's lost his glasses. He comes with shades into the courthouse and he says, my lord, I am wearing sunglasses in the house today, not because I take a dim view of the merits of the case from the ANC. If I had time, I would have found that clip for you, but just believe me, that's exactly what happened. He came in there and said, I don't take a dim view. I'm not wearing, but then he went on to say, but I do take a dim view of what the ANC's case is. So what he said, let me get back into the zone here. What he said is the following. I did not assist you or your office in reviewing and assessing the nominations received for the appointment of accounting authorities per the Sexual Education and Training Authorities. I did not participate in this process. I neither received nor saw any information relating to the process, if any was followed. I also did not convene with any panel or panel members, if any were appointed. I received no formal engagement from an attorney. You should be aware that you never met with me regarding this process and that I never received any documentation relating to it. You should also know that you received no communication, report, shortlist, assessment, or recommendations from me. You further would know that the upshot of all of this is that you intended to appoint me to chair the committee with intention. You further would know that the upshot of all of this is that you intended to appoint me to chair the committee, which intention never materialized. That's critical. That's damning. That's something that is a checkmate for the minister. She's in checkmate right now. The king must fall. The king must fall. That is what happens in a situation like this. You've run out of moves. You appointed the son of the ANC chairperson to chair a SETA board. Then it was brought up in parliament. Then members of parliament were kicked out for bringing it up. Then you withdrew the appointments. Then you went to parliament and said there was an independent panel. Now it appears there was no independent panel. Either these names were submitted as part of a cover-up, or there's another group of people who gave you the names. Did the names come from Gwede Mantashe? Where did the names come from? Whatever happens, as things stand right now, it appears that the minister lied to parliament, that she violated various pieces of legislation which require her to exercise her duties ethically and honorably. On the 18th of June, the Higher Education Parliamentary Committee expressed its concerns that the minister had lied to the committee and that they need to get her back to explain herself. But not only herself, the two deputy ministers should also come, and all the directors and other key bureaucrats who work in the department who may have been involved in any of the decisions that were made here. I think that the minister has reached the end of the road. She may stay in a position for a bit longer. She really may stay. But in terms of, is she in a position where she has any moves left? I don't know. I don't think so. So one of the names that comes up in the discussion about what happens if the president removes the minister is who should be the next minister of higher education. If the president were to reshuffle the cabinet, who would he put in the Ministry of Higher Education? And the name that often comes up is Buti Manamela, and we have to consider it a little bit. He's the current Deputy Minister of Higher Education. Buti Manamela is 45 years old. He's been serving as Deputy Minister since 2017, so he has 8 years of experience in this particular role. He was elected to the National Assembly in the 2009 general election. Jacob Zuma appointed him as Deputy Minister in the presidency after the 2014 general election. And Buti Manamela actually studied towards an electronic engineering diploma at the Mamelodi College, which is now Tshwane North College in Pretoria. In 2017, he completed a master's degree in public policy from the University of the Witwatersrand. So people may view him as having sufficient experience as somebody who went to a TVET, somebody who went to a main university, somebody who worked and participated in student politics quite actively, and somebody who is relatively young in terms of him being 45 years old. So they may view him as a good fit, but his experience as deputy minister is also something that they may view as being positive for his appointment to this position. So that's where things stand now. What do you make of this whole situation? Do you think that the minister will step down? Do you think that the president will protect her? If so, for how long? Does she have a faction? Is she part of the Mantashe faction? Is he going to protect her? She has been on the cover of Sunday Times twice in a month. That in and of itself is not a great development for her politically. The president reads the Sunday Times. In fact, he used to own the business. So he's going to see that. And she's in it this Sunday twice. She's in trouble. And if you think about where we are right now with higher education, this year marks 10 years since fees must fall. The protest started in 2015. Students were struggling to access financing to access university. And up to now, those struggles continue to exist. There are reports of students being victims of crimes on university campuses, murders, thefts, rapes. All of these things are happening on campuses. Students are struggling with finance still. The dropout problem is still significant even up to now. So the challenges facing the higher education sector are significant. They're very significant. And that puts an urgency on the president. There's this large student population. We're going to local government elections. We're going to the next elections. There's a large student population on universities. I think between the TVETs and the 26 universities is about 2 million people who are registered and enrolled. And then there's staff members, there's a variety of people. The university ecosystem in and of itself is large. So if you leave this kind of a crisis to continue to fester, this leadership crisis, it could end up actually affecting even the presidency and the prospects of the ANC. So I think Mr. Ramaphosa appreciates that this is serious. The SETAs themselves have got a 20 billion budget. The higher education sector itself is dealing with billions. You don't want a person in that position who is now being accused of lying, of appointing people in a funny way, of being dismissive to parliament, when professors now are writing and saying she needs to step down. It's a significant moment. And I think that in 30 days, the minister actually she made things go from bad to worse. She really did. The original thing, appointing people who are that politically connected in a coalition government where you can't just appoint, because now the dynamics have shifted. In the GNU, the dynamics are not such that the ANC controls the committee, controls everything. You have people, even within your coalition, who are going to challenge you, who are still competing with you. You have young members of parliament from opposition parties who are trying to show people that they deserve to be in parliament for a long time and to grow their support base and the support base of their parties. The party is over for the ANC just to be able to appoint whomsoever, whensoever. And I think the minister was not fully cognizant of that. Because where things are right now, she's in a whole lot of mess. I think that at some point, President Ramaphosa will have to remove her. And I think the fact that she's on the cover and also in another part of the newspaper also shows that the media is pushing for that. And this media house is somewhat connected and favorable to the president. So you may find that a decision has already been made. Things don't just show up on the front pages of Sunday Times and other media houses. By now, you should know that. I don't know, though. What do you think? Let's have a conversation. Meet you in the comments.